This is the Darmoshark M3. It's a $39, 58 gram gaming mouse that punches way above its price point. I've owned this mouse for about 5 months and I've put some time on it over the last week in XDefiant. I have been maining the Razer Viper V3 Pro for the last month, and so I figured it might be fun to put this mouse up against it and see how I perform. There are a couple of things that I didn't like about this mouse, but a lot of things that I really did. So given that it's a budget mouse coming in at $40, I figured it was worth a look. So the clicks on the M3 are acceptable, but unremarkable. They are light and pretty crisp. However, I do feel that there is some noticeable wobble on 1 and 2, and I can feel the switch underneath when I am moving my mouse around on my desk. There is a noticeable like crunchy feeling when you press the mouse button down, which isn't great, but also didn't really affect the performance. However, one thing that I did notice with my copy was the tensioning on the switches is super light. So I did have a few times where I was in game and I accidentally ADS'd my gun because I was accidentally depressing mouse 2 because they are so light. So it is something to note. If you like super light clicks, that might be an upside for you, but for me it was something that I didn't totally enjoy. Now, I can't really tell if there's a coating on the M3. It feels mostly like just plain ABS plastic, and it feels quite thin at that. So it's not particularly grippy. One nice thing though is that because this shares a shape with the Finalmouse Air 58, you can actually buy grip tape for the Finalmouse Air 58 and stick it right on here and it works just fine. I actually did that with my copy, but being that I'm not big on grip tape, I decided not to use it, but it is always an option if that's something that you want to do. So speaking of the Finalmouse Air 58, the Darmoshark and the Finalmouse are an almost identical shape. There are some subtle differences to the flares on the front of the mouse as well as the height of the hump, but they're very minor. And my understanding is the Darmoshark is actually made in the same factory that the Air 58 was. The skates on the bottom are the same shape as the Air 58 and they performed very well in game. In the box, you do get included an extra set of skates as well as some dot skates, which is a nice inclusion. I wish more manufacturers included additional skates. So the scroll wheel on the M3 is actually pretty good. It's not as notchy or as tactile as I typically like, but it's very quiet, very smooth, and doesn't have any rattles, which is great. Now, one thing that I would knock the Darmoshark M3 on is the build quality. So the build quality on the M3 is probably the area that I think you definitely notice that cheaper price. It's got a lot of flex and popping and creaking on the sides when you squeeze it. There's a rattle when you shake the mouse, and overall it just does kind of have a cheap feel to it. So it's totally usable. It's not going to probably affect you in game, but it is something that is definitely obvious when you hold this next to a more expensive mouse, is that it does have a cheap feel to it. The side button implementation is very good. They actually remind me of the side buttons on the Viper V3 Pro. They're very clicky and they have no pre or post travel. They're honestly very solid. If I was going to knock them on anything, it's that I wish they were just a hair bigger and a little bit farther back. They're a little bit far forward on the mouse for my liking, but I think that again, most people would find that they're totally serviceable. For grip styles on the M3, I think you can get away with almost any grip. I found it most comfortable in palm grip, being that it's a larger mouse. If you have bigger hands, you can certainly fingertip it. The one grip style that I didn't find super comfortable was claw grip, and that's just because the flare on the front right-hand side really didn't give me a comfortable place to put my ring finger when I was gripping the mouse. So if you're a claw gripper, this is probably not the best mouse for you, but I would say generally for most people, you can probably find a grip that'll work well. The software experience is pretty basic. It used to be that you needed to download some weird software that didn't have any English text on it. Now, however, Darmoshark does have on their website some legitimate software for your PC, and it does allow you to change your button functions, adjust the DPI in your mouse as well as your polling rate, and change things like your liftoff distance, turn off motion sync, and a few other options. So how did I perform with the mouse? I would say overall pretty well. I did find the mouse to feel a little bit floaty, and I attribute that mostly to the fact that the sensor position is a little lower than what I am used to, but the skates, the glide, the clicks, everything functioned perfectly fine in game. And though I would say this shape doesn't work the best for me, it also wasn't a major hindrance to my performance at all. So I think the performance and the on-paper specs of this mouse are solid. So the Darmoshark M3 is pretty solid for a budget mouse. It gives you the shape of an Air 58 without the holes and with some wireless tech, which is great. The biggest knocks on it are the coating is a little bit lackluster. I don't think the clicks feel great, but they do perform just fine. And the shape is something that might not work for a lot of people because it is a pretty large mouse and it's quite wide at the front. But if you know that you like the shape, or you even just want to give it a try for 40 bucks, I think it's pretty solid.